Give me the keys, Cynthia. My father-in-law, Martin, stood in the middle of my grandparents' living room with his hand stretched out like he was collecting rent from a tenant. Behind him, my husband Daniel looked at the floor. I laughed once because I thought I had misheard him. Martin's eyes moved over the walls, the staircase, the hallway, like he was already dividing the house into pieces. There's no reason for you two to keep all this space to yourselves. Marissa and the kids can take the downstairs room. Your mother-in-law and I can use the guest room when we visit. I turned to Daniel. When we visit. Daniel finally looked up. Cynthia, don't make this awkward. This is my grandparents' house. Martin clicked his tongue. And now you're married. That means decisions like this are family decisions. Then Daniel said the sentence that made the room tilt. Just give him the keys. For a second, I almost did. That was the worst part. The house still smelled faintly of lemon oil and old wood. My grandfather's hand had polished the banister smooth over 40 years. My grandmother's rose curtains still hung in the front window. The kitchen table had a tiny burn mark from the summer I dropped a sparkler on it when I was 9. They had saved their entire lives for this place. No vacations, no new cars. My grandmother had worn the same winter coat for 12 years because, as she always said, a paid-off home is peace. And now Martin was walking through that peace like an appraiser. He had already opened closets, checked the second bathroom, measured the downstairs bedroom with his eyes. At one point he said, "This exterior door is useful," and my stomach tightened. "How do you know about that door?" I asked. Daniel cleared his throat. "I might have mentioned it." Martin added, "We've already discussed the best arrangement." I said. Daniel cut in too fast. "We can talk about it later." That was when I remembered the email I had seen on Daniel's laptop 2 nights earlier, just one line before he snapped it shut. Transfer must happen before occupancy. Martin's palm was still waiting. So I stood up, smiled, and said, "Of course. But before I hand over keys to a house you don't own, why don't we all talk about the agreement you made behind my back?" Martin's face lost all its color. For 3 full seconds, nobody moved. Daniel's mother sat stiffly on the edge of my grandmother's floral sofa, her purse balanced on her knees. Marissa, Daniel's sister, stopped scrolling through her phone and looked from me to her father. Martin slowly lowered his hand. Then Daniel grabbed my wrist. "Hallway," he whispered. I pulled my hand back. "Don't touch me like that." His jaw tightened, but he forced a smile toward his family. "We'll be right back." He didn't wait for my answer. He walked into the narrow hallway beside the kitchen, and I followed because I wanted to hear what lie he would choose first. The moment we were out of sight, his voice dropped. "What is wrong with you?" I stared at him. "With me. You just accused my father of something in front of everyone. Why does your father know the house is paid off?" Daniel blinked. I stepped closer. Why does he know about the side door? Why does he know which bedroom would fit Marissa's children? Why is he asking for keys like this was already decided? Daniel rubbed both hands over his face. "I was trying to plan for our future." "Our future doesn't require your father choosing bedrooms in my grandparents' house." "He's trying to help." "No, Daniel, he's trying to take control." Daniel's eyes sharpened. "Marissa is struggling, you know that. Her rent went up and she has 2 kids. You have a whole empty house." I looked past him into the kitchen, at the little burn mark on the table where my grandmother used to put a bowl of peaches every July. "Then you should have asked me, not promised her rooms." "I told them we would help," he said. There it was, not a misunderstanding, not a casual conversation, a promise made with my inheritance as the payment. Over the past month, Daniel had kept bringing up the deed, softly at first. It might be safer if both our names were on it. Then again over dinner. "What if something happens to you?" Then in front of Martin, who smiled and called the house a valuable asset. Not a home, an asset. When I said I wanted to meet the estate attorney alone, Daniel told me it would look suspicious, like I didn't trust him. When Martin joked that I wouldn't know what to do with property like this, Daniel laughed instead of defending me. Now he stood in my hallway acting injured because I had noticed. From the living room, Martin's voice cut through. Daniel shouldn't have to beg his wife to make adult decisions. I walked back before Daniel could stop me. Martin was standing now, one hand tucked into his coat pocket, his chin lifted like he was addressing a boardroom. "Cynthia, you're young, you're grieving. Property management is complicated. Daniel can handle the practical side." My throat tightened. The old habit rose in me automatically. Apologize, soften, smooth it over, make everyone comfortable. But then I saw Daniel behind me, waiting for me to fold. I reached into my pocket and closed my fingers around my key ring. "No," I said. Martin's eyebrows lifted. "No one is getting keys today. No one is moving into this house. And no one is making another plan about it until I speak to my attorney." Daniel's expression changed so quickly it scared me. The gentle husband I knew disappeared, and something cold took his place. "You're choosing a dead woman's house over your living family," he said. The room went still again. I looked at him, then at Martin, then at the walls my grandparents had painted themselves because they couldn't afford contractors. "My grandmother left this house to me," I said, "not to your family." Daniel reached into his jacket pocket. And that was when I saw the second set of keys already in his hand. The next morning, I found out exactly what those keys were for. I was standing in the kitchen, still in my slippers, waiting for the attorney's office to open, when a truck rumbled outside so loudly the windows shook. At first, I thought it was construction on the street. Then I looked through the rose curtains. A rented moving van was parked in my grandparents' driveway. Marissa stood on the porch with 2 suitcases, 3 cardboard boxes, and her children pressed close to her sides. One of the boys was holding a stuffed dinosaur. The younger one looked half asleep, wearing mismatched socks. For one second, my anger cracked. Those children had no idea they had been placed in the middle of this. Then Marissa knocked. When I opened the door, she smiled nervously. "Hey, I know yesterday was tense, but Daniel said we should just come early and get settled before Dad makes everything worse." "Get settled?" I asked. Her smile faded. "In the downstairs room." I looked past her at the van. A mattress was strapped inside. Trash bags full of clothes were piled beside a small bookshelf. "Marissa," I said carefully, "I never agreed to you moving in." Her face changed like I had slapped her. "What?" "I'm sorry Daniel told you something different, but no one is moving into this house." The neighbor across the street, Mrs. Alvarez, had come outside to water plants she had already watered. Another neighbor slowed his dog to a near stop in front of the driveway. Marissa's eyes filled. "Daniel said it was approved. He said you were adding him to the deed and that this was basically family property." The words landed harder because she said them in front of witnesses. Before I could respond, a black SUV pulled up behind the van. Martin got out first. He didn't look surprised to see the boxes. He looked annoyed that I was still standing in the doorway. "What's the problem now?" he called loudly enough for the neighbors to hear. "The problem," I said, "is that your daughter showed up to move into my house without my permission." Martin gave a dry laugh. "Your house, listen to yourself." Marissa wiped at her cheek. "Dad," Daniel said. Martin cut her off. "Cynthia inherited more than she deserves and still won't help family. That's what this is." Mrs. Alvarez stopped pretending to water. My face burned, but I kept my hand on the doorframe. Daniel's car turned the corner 5 minutes later. He got out fast, eyes darting from the van to the neighbors to me. "Cynthia," he said under his breath, "calm down. Don't make this public." "You made it public when your sister arrived with a moving van." He stepped closer. "We can discuss this inside." "No," I said. "We can discuss it right here." Martin's mouth tightened. I looked directly at Daniel. "Did you tell Marissa she could move in today?" Daniel glanced at his sister, then at his father. "I said it was basically settled." "Did I agree to that?" He exhaled sharply. You were going to, once everything was finalized. What was finalized? Marissa answered before he could. The deed thing. Daniel said you were putting his name on it after the estate paperwork. I heard my own heartbeat. I never agreed to add Daniel to the deed, I said. Daniel's eyes flashed. Don't twist this. Martin stepped forward, lowering his voice just enough to sound dangerous. Daniel has marital rights. You can't just lock your husband's family out because you're having feelings. I don't know every legal detail, I said, but I know this house was inherited separately, and I'm verifying everything with an attorney. At the word attorney, Martin's expression shifted. Only for a second. But I saw it. Attorneys are expensive, he snapped, and unnecessary. Families solve things privately. That's interesting, I said, because yesterday you all seemed very comfortable solving my house privately without me. Daniel moved past me suddenly. He had the second set of keys in his hand. He shoved one toward the lock. I stepped in front of him before the key could slide in. You can enter as my husband, I said, my voice shaking but clear. But nobody is moving in. His face was inches from mine. You're making the biggest mistake of your life. Behind him, Marissa looked from the boxes to Daniel. Wait, she said. What about the money Dad already put down? Everything stopped. Daniel went pale. Martin spun toward her. Get in the car, he said. Dad. Martin grabbed her arm and hissed, now. After they left, the driveway looked almost normal again. No moving van, no boxes, no Martin standing there with his chest puffed out, trying to make my grandparents' front porch look like a courtroom where he was the judge. But the lock told the truth. There were fresh scratches around it where Daniel had tried to force his key in while I stood in front of the door. I touched the marks with my thumb, and something inside me went completely still. This was not a misunderstanding anymore. This was a plan. I went to the kitchen, sat at my grandmother's table, and called the estate attorney whose number was still written in blue ink on a magnet by the refrigerator. My hands shook so badly I had to dial twice. When the receptionist answered, I said, My name is Cynthia. My grandmother left me her house, and my husband's family is trying to move people into it. The attorney called me back within the hour. I told him everything. Martin demanding keys, Daniel mentioning the deed, Marissa arriving with a moving van, the second set of keys, and that strange line from the email. Transfer must happen before occupancy. The attorney was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Cynthia, listen carefully. Based on the documents from your grandmother's estate, the house is in your name only. It was inherited by you separately. Your husband does not have automatic authority to transfer it, lease it, refinance it, or give anyone permission to occupy it. I closed my eyes. For the first time since Martin walked through the door, I could breathe. What if Daniel keeps saying I should add him to the deed? I asked. Do not sign anything without independent review, the attorney said, and do not let anyone pressure you into changing title. That sentence stayed with me. Changing title. Not sharing a room, not helping family, not being generous. Changing ownership. After the call, I went back to the small house Daniel and I had been renting while the estate finished. I did not plan to search his things. I told myself I was only going to get clothes, my laptop, and the folder with my grandmother's papers. But Daniel's office door was open. And on the desk, half tucked under a stack of mail, was a folder with my name written across the tab. Cynthia House. Not Grandma's house, not inheritance, not estate. Cynthia House. I stood there for a long moment, listening to the hum of the refrigerator down the hall. Then I opened it. The first page was a printed property estimate with the value circled in red. Behind that were photos of every room, the downstairs bedroom, the side entrance, the guest room, even the kitchen. Photos Daniel had taken when he said he was documenting things for insurance. Then came rental calculations. Then a draft quitclaim deed. My mouth went dry when I saw my name typed beside the word grantor. Daniel's name was typed beside grantee. Underneath, that was a handwritten sheet in Martin's blocky, slanted writing. Marissa occupancy first. Pressure C emotionally. Refi after deed change. I had to sit down. Every strange moment rearranged itself in my head. Martin knew the room sizes because Daniel had sent him photos. Daniel wanted his name on the deed because Martin needed a path into the property. Marissa showing up with children and boxes was not just bad timing. It was leverage. They wanted her inside first, crying on the porch if I said no, settled into the downstairs room if I hesitated, harder to remove once the neighbors believed I had thrown out a struggling mother. But one line still bothered me. Money Dad already put down. Put down on what? The front door opened. I heard Daniel's keys hit the bowl by the entryway. Cynthia, he called. I did not move fast enough. He appeared in the office doorway and saw the folder open on my lap. His face changed. What are you doing? He said. I held up the handwritten note, reading. You went through my office. You made a folder about my house. That is not the point. It is exactly the point. He came into the room and reached for the papers, but I stood and stepped back. Why does your father's handwriting say, pressure C emotionally? Daniel's mouth opened, then closed. And what money did Marissa mean? I asked. What did your father already put down? His eyes moved toward the folder. He invested in plans. What plans? Plans for the property, he snapped, because we were supposed to be adults about this. Wait. You keep saying my house, my grandparents, my decision. His voice rose. We're married, Cynthia. At some point you have to stop acting like your grief gives you a crown. That landed, but it did not break me. I looked at the draft deed again. No, I said, it gave me a house, legally, specifically, in writing. Daniel's face tightened. You're being ridiculous. I took out my phone and began photographing every page. He stepped toward me. Stop. I kept taking pictures. Cynthia. Click. Stop photographing private documents. Click. These are documents about my property. He reached for my phone, but I backed into the hallway. You are not taking that from me. For once, he stopped. Maybe it was my voice. Maybe it was the way I held the folder against my chest like evidence instead of paper. I left with the documents photographed, my grandmother's estate folder under my arm, and my laptop in a bag. By sunset, I had done 3 things I had never imagined doing in my own marriage. I changed the locks on my grandparents' house using proof of ownership. I booked an emergency appointment with the estate attorney. And I placed the folder photos into a private drive Daniel could not access. When Daniel called, I almost did not answer. Then I did. His voice was cold. If you don't apologize to my father, I'm staying at my parents' house. I looked at the new deadbolt on the front door. You can choose where you sleep, I said, but you cannot choose what happens to my grandparents' home. There was silence. Then the line went dead. A minute later, I carried the copied documents to my car and locked them in the glove compartment. The porch light flickered above me. The street was quiet. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered carefully. A man's voice said, Mrs. Cynthia Reynolds. This is Harold Pike, attorney for Martin Reynolds. I'm calling about the transfer paperwork. I stood under the porch light with my phone pressed to my ear, staring at the closed glove compartment where I had just locked away photos of the folder Daniel never wanted me to find. For a second, I did not speak. The man on the phone cleared his throat. Mrs. Reynolds. Yes, I said carefully. What transfer paperwork? There was a pause, small but sharp enough to notice. I'm referring to the revised property transfer documents, he said. Mr. Martin Reynolds asked our office to confirm when you intend to sign. He indicated there had been a delay due to some family disagreement. My grip tightened around the phone. What kind of transfer? The deed update adding your husband as co-owner, he said. After that, we would prepare the family occupancy agreement. And then, assuming the title work is completed, there was supposed to be a refinance consultation. The night air seemed to thin around me. A deed update. An occupancy agreement. A refinance consultation. 3 words Martin had never said in my living room while holding out his hand for my keys. I forced my voice to stay even. Did Martin tell you I had agreed to all of this? He said the family arrangement had already been discussed. Discussed with me. Another pause. I was under the impression your husband was coordinating with you. My laugh came out once, quiet and empty. No, he was. The attorney's tone changed. Mrs. Reynolds, to be clear, nothing can proceed without your signature. I understand, I said, and I will not be signing anything. I see. One more question, I said. Was Martin trying to use my house for money? The attorney did not answer immediately. Then he said, I can't discuss my client's financial position in detail. That was answer enough. I thanked him, ended the call, and stood there until the porch light clicked off from lack of movement. Leaving me in the dark outside the house, my grandparents had paid for one careful dollar at a time. The next morning, I sat across from the estate attorney with printed screenshots, the property estimates, the draft quitclaim deed, and Martin's handwritten notes spread across the conference table. The attorney adjusted his glasses and read the page twice. Marissa occupancy first, he said quietly. He moved his finger down. Pressure C emotionally. Then lower. Refi after deed change. He looked up at me. Cynthia, this is not legally effective because you have not signed anything, but it is serious. They were trying to create pressure around a transfer of ownership. So Daniel couldn't give them the house. No. Could Martin move anyone in? No. Could they refinance it? Not unless you transferred ownership or signed loan documents. I sat back, and for the first time, the whole shape of it became visible. Martin did not want keys because Marissa needed a room. He wanted keys because the room was step 1. If Marissa and her children moved in, I would look cruel for removing them. If Daniel's name went on the deed, Martin could call the house a family asset. If the refinance happened, the paid-off home my grandparents left behind would become collateral for Martin's failing business. And Daniel had helped him. Not by accident. Not because he was confused. He had taken the photos. He had made the second set of keys. He had told Marissa to bring a moving van. He had let his father stand in my living room and demand the keys to a house that was never theirs. My attorney slid a yellow notepad toward me. From this point forward, I recommend all communication go through counsel. No private meetings, no signing, no access to the property without your approval. I nodded. Then I sent Daniel one message. Do not return to the house without arranging it through my attorney. He called 6 times. I did not answer. That evening, he came anyway. His car pulled up first. Martin's black SUV followed close behind. I watched them through the front window, standing beside the rose curtains my grandmother had sewn by hand. Daniel got out with his hands raised, like he was the reasonable one. Martin slammed his door and marched up the walkway. Open the door, Cynthia, Daniel called. We need to talk. I did not open it. Instead, I held up my phone so they could see the video call already running. My estate attorney's face was on the screen. Daniel's expression faltered. Martin pointed at the door. This is childish. I opened it only as far as the chain lock allowed. No, I said, this is documented. Behind them, another car pulled in. Daniel's mother stepped out slowly, looking uncertain. Marissa got out after her, arms crossed, eyes still red from the day before. Martin turned. Why are they here? Because you used them too, I said. Marissa looked at me. Used me how? I lifted the printed page and read it aloud. Marissa occupancy first. Her arms dropped slightly. I read the next line. Pressure C emotionally. Daniel shut his eyes. I looked at Martin. That was your handwriting. Martin's mouth twisted. You went through private papers. They were papers about my house, I said, and they were in a folder with my name on it. Daniel's mother stared at Martin. What is she talking about? I continued before he could answer. The plan was to get Marissa inside first. Then Daniel would pressure me to add him to the deed. After that, Martin's attorney would prepare an occupancy agreement. Then came the refinance consultation. Marissa looked at her father. Refinance? Dad, you told me Cynthia already agreed. Martin's face hardened. This is family business. No, I said. It was my property being used to cover your business problems. Daniel's mother's voice came out small. Martin. He did not look at her. She asked quieter, is the debt real? The porch went silent. Martin's jaw worked, but no words came out. That silence did more damage than any confession could have. Marissa stepped away from him. You let me bring my kids here with boxes. I was trying to solve a problem, Martin snapped. Whose problem? She asked. Daniel finally spoke. Cynthia, I know this looks bad. I turned to him so sharply he stopped. It doesn't look bad, I said. It is bad. He swallowed. I thought once everything settled, you'd understand. Understand what? That you made promises with my inheritance, that you copied keys, that you told your sister she could move in before I ever agreed. I was under pressure. From him, I nodded toward Martin, or from wanting his approval. Daniel's face tightened, then cracked just enough for me to see the answer. I asked him the question I had been carrying since the first moment Martin held out his hand. Were you going to tell me before I signed, or after? Daniel looked at the porch floor. He said nothing. That was the end of my marriage, even before the paperwork began. The following week, my attorney sent formal notice to Martin, Daniel, and every member of his family. No one was allowed to enter, occupy, lease, alter, or claim any right to my grandparents' house. Any further attempt would be handled legally. I filed for legal separation. The locks stayed changed. Security cameras went up above the porch and side door. Every conversation moved to email or through attorneys. Martin's reputation did not explode all at once. It collapsed in pieces. First, Marissa found out there had never been permission for her to move in. Then she learned the rental van deposit was gone because Martin had told her not to renew her lease. She demanded he repay her in front of the whole family. Then Daniel's mother found out about the failed business debt. The man who had spent years acting like the smartest person in every room had been trying to drag my grandparents' paid-off home into the hole he created. At the next family gathering, I heard later, Martin tried to say I had overreacted. Marissa stood up and said, You wrote pressure Cynthia emotionally on paper. Don't call that overreacting. After that, people stopped looking at him the same way. Daniel sent apologies for weeks. Some were angry, some were desperate, some sounded almost real. But none of them answered the only question that mattered. Why had he needed to be caught before he chose me? So I stopped reading them. The house became quiet again. Not empty. Quiet. I kept my grandfather's worn banister exactly as it was. I left my grandmother's rose curtains in the front window. But slowly, I made the place mine too. The downstairs bedroom Martin had chosen for Marissa became a reading room. I put my grandmother's chair by the window, a small lamp beside it, and shelves along the wall where his rental calculations had once tried to claim space. Sometimes I sat there in the evening with tea, listening to the floorboards settle, and I thought about how close I had come to handing over the keys just to keep peace. That version of me was gone. Martin had walked into my grandparents' house believing age, volume, and family pressure would be enough. Daniel had stood beside him, believing my silence was guaranteed. But in the end, neither of them got the deed, the refinance, the rooms, or the keys. I placed my grandparents' original key back on its hook by the door and said, "This house was never yours to take.